market update. So it's really important to know where we were, and it's really important to be able to use that information to figure out where we are going. So what I'm going to do as we go through the presentation tonight is share with you last month's data when it comes to how the market was performing. So at the top of this slide, I have April of 2022 versus April of 2021. So last month, and this slide is for all of Texas, I'm going to break down the 4 major cities here in Texas, just so you know what's going on everywhere. But last month, the sales price average was $432,000 here in Texas. It was up 17.5% versus where we were the same time last year. Days on market, houses are going under contract in a very quick 30 days. Months of inventory right now is 1.3 months of inventory, which is the same as it was the same time last year. And I know probably all of you guys are familiar with the concept of days on market, but maybe some of you are not as familiar with the concept of months of inventory. So months of inventory, when you break that down, effectively it means if you stopped listing houses today, based on the average buyer demand that we've had over the last 12 months on a monthly basis, this is how much inventory we have before we are completely out of an inventory of homes for sale. So if I stopped listing homes today, in exactly 1.3 months, I would be completely out of inventory. Now, you might say, okay, great, and it was 1.3 months last year, so why is she still talking about this? Well, here's why. You see this huge jump in this average price, right? It is because we have no inventory. 1.3 months is effectively having no inventory. Our 40-year average on inventory is somewhere around 6 to 6.5 months, okay? So right now we're operating on about 1/6 of our normal inventory. And because of that, it has become a major seller's market here in Texas and in many areas throughout the United States. Primarily because we're just not building as many houses as we need to supply the growth that we've had. So last month our closed sales were down. They were down about 3.5% versus where we were in April of 2021. Now, that being said, I believe if we had more houses to sell, we would probably actually have had an up month. Our number of inventory right now is pretty much flat year over year at about 45,000 listings in Texas. But I will tell you, pre-2020, this number looked closer to about 100,000 listings here in Texas. In fact, maybe even over that. So because of that, our forecast for 2022, which is in this bottom right-hand corner right here, we're forecasting that our sales volume will be up about 5%. So year to date, even though last month was down, year to date, our sales are still up. And we're forecasting our average price to increase around 20%. Again, because we're just not adding enough inventory and we have people moving here from all over the US and even from all over the world right now. So we're seeing that big growth. And normally in a normal market, our average price increase would be somewhere around 5-6%. That's what a normal market looks like for us in Texas. But because we have no inventory and we have a very high demand because so many people are moving here, it's the basic law of economics and supply and demand. We're having this big jump up in the average price. Houston last month, the average price was $426,000, up 15% versus last year. Sales last month in in Houston, they were down, but they were only down 0.2%, which basically means Houston was raising the curve for all of Texas. Houston was the market that performed the best out of all the markets here, and partially because Houston has a little bit more inventory than, for example, Dallas and Austin. Active listings in Houston were up 5%. And then our closest leading indicator for what closed sales will be next month, the pending sales in Houston were down last month 1%. The forecast for 2022 for Houston is that sales will be up somewhere between 10 to 15%. Last year they were up 10%, and the average price will be up somewhere between 15 and 20%, which is very consistent for where we've been over the last few weeks. In the San Antonio market, guys, April 22 sales price was $396,000, up 20% from where it was the same time last year. Houses went under contract after being listed on the MLS within 31 days, so a very short amount of time. Closed sales last month were down. They were down 8%. Now, in this case, we have that average 1.3 months of inventory. Part of me thinks this is still a little bit of a hangover from February of 2021 when we had this snowstorm that shut us down for a little while and caused a fair amount of damage throughout Texas in our homes, especially the ones that lost electricity and especially the ones that lost some pipes, right? So if you look at February 2022 versus February 2021, there was a big jump, and that was primarily because for 2 weeks roughly we kind of suffered during the snowstorm and the ice storm, right? So we saw a big jump in the March sales, and I think we also saw a big jump in the April sales, and I think that's one of the reasons why 2022 for the month of March and April did not hit the same 2021 numbers. So it's not to say that the San Antonio market is you know, it's over, let's just go home. Yeah, it's not to say that, right? The market's still very strong here, and year-to-date sales are still up. Pending sales are down, but they're only down slightly versus where we were last year by less than 100. Active listings, we are increasing the number of active listings, so that's going to help take a little bit of the upward pressure off of the sales price, which is both good and bad, right? So it creates some opportunity for more affordability, especially in a rising interest rate market. But you know, for us as real estate investors, as we're buying based on the current ARV and selling maybe based on the ARV in 6 months from now, we like it when the values are going up, do we not? Yes, exactly. So the forecast for 2022 sales up 3 to 5%, the average price up somewhere between 15 and 18%. In the Dallas and Fort Worth market, the average price was $486,000, up 19%. Days on market, 23 days before it goes under contract. Dallas sales were down last month by 3%, but look at their months of inventory. Went from a 2-month supply of inventory to a 0.8 month supply of inventory. Pending sales down 4%, but total active listings are up. The forecast for Dallas for 2022 in terms of sales should be up somewhere between 1 to 3%. The average price up somewhere between 18 and 20%. For the Austin market, the average price was $680,000. Days on market, not even 3 weeks in Austin, because there's a 0.8 month supply of inventory. Last year it was 17, so this is the only market that actually saw an increase in days on market. But in truth, it's kind of hard to get even below 30 days on market, so 18, 17 days are pretty much neck and neck. The pending sales are down. They're down by about 300 sales, about 10%. So that will show up probably in closed sales as we finish out the month of May. Active listings, Austin had their biggest jump in active listings, almost a 50% increase year over year, which is a little unheard of. But that's something that will also help take some of that upward pressure off of that average price. The forecast for 2022 I'm hoping that Austin's going to be able to pull out a 2% increase. Somehow last year, even with 0.5 months of inventory, they were able to pull a 2.5% increase in sales. Average price up somewhere between 25 and 30% because Austin has the lowest inventory of any of the other major markets in Texas. Was that useful for you guys in kind of understanding what's happening here? Okay, good. And then next week, next Tuesday when I do the presentation, I'm going to go through some of the housing market economic indicators that will give us an idea of what to expect given that we're maybe in a bear market in the stock market, given that we're seeing rising interest rates, given the war in the Ukraine, and about 15 other factors that I have identified that affect our housing market. So excited to be able to show that to you guys as well.